Hi everyone, thanks for joining in on another secret creature feature, The Art of Kelly Patton. Today I have a new painting I'd like to share the process of. Snow Stag. I'm going to be showing some techniques that I use to create the painting, as well as some inspiration that came throughout the process. And I wanted to break down how long it took to paint one of my watercolors, since that's a pretty frequent question that people ask me. Okay, so the first day I worked on a digital drawing of the stag. Then when that was completed, I went and I stretched the watercolor paper. And how I do that is I take a 22 by 30 inch sheet of Arches watercolor paper and I cut it to about 18 by 14 inches. And then I get it wet and I spread it across this gator board that I have, and I use a ratchet system to frame the paper onto the gator board so that when it dries, it will dry totally flat.
Once the drawing is complete on my iPad, I send the file over to Adobe Acrobat to print out the image in a tiled format. When I first created the document in Procreate, I made a file that was exactly the size I wanted the painting to be, so when it's ready to print in Acrobat, I can have the biggest version I need. Since I only have an 8.5 by 11 page printer, the only way to print out a large print is to send it through in tiles.
Now I'm transferring the graphite to the back of the drawing that I printed out on the printer. So when I put it down on the watercolor sheet, I can trace those lines again, and then it will make an impression of the original drawing on the watercolor paper. Then I gotta find a cozy place to sit, of course, so I could draw all the lines again. And that, I would say I draw these lines about 4 or 5 times.
I use a colored ballpoint pen to trace over the lines so that I can tell where I've been, and it gives just the right amount of pressure to transfer the graphite onto the soft watercolor paper. There's some loose graphite floating around on my lovely white watercolor paper, so in order to remove that excess graphite, I trace the drawing again with a 4H or harder pencil. Then I gently erase the graphite to lift it off the paper. But I'm still left with very light lines that won't smear from a watercolor wash.
So when I'm ready to begin the painting, I do a wash over the paper. So there's going to be wet paper ready for the watercolor first. So I get my brush really, really wet, and it's usually a pretty big, wide, flat brush, so I can cover the whole sheet of paper. And I do it all at once. So I do the whole background first, and then I'll get a lot of paint on the brush. Don't get shy to get some extra pigment on there. And I'll lay down the color as much as I can and let the watercolor do its thing. This is one of my favorite parts of the process because it just kind of surprises you in so many different ways. Watercolor dries in unexpected shapes, so later on you can kind of see things come through that you didn't originally envision in the picture. While I'm painting, I do like to listen to podcasts and audiobooks, and I'll often play Seinfeld in the background. Seinfeld's one of my favorite things to watch when I'm painting because it's hilarious, but it also kind of kills the lonely feeling of just being an artist and painting and the solitary nature of the work. And so, yeah, you'll hear me laughing a little bit in this video to some Seinfeld videos. So a lot of the painting after the wash is done is really just drawing with a detail brush. Depending on which color I'm using, I will dip my brush in that paint and then use that really thin line brush to go over all of my original lines again. And then I'll take a bigger brush and go back in again and do some glazing. So what I mean by that is that I'll take a brighter color, a transparent color, and go back over some of the colors that I already laid down to kind of start seeing the saturation of color and the glow of the watercolor come through.
One of the biggest challenges I face when I'm painting in watercolor is to loosen up. It's good to set your painting on the table to paint and try holding it upright on an easel as well to allow your arm to have more fluid movement. To me, loosening up is kind of a state of flow. Once I've been painting for about 15 minutes, I feel something almost guide my arm. It's a sort of trust that I feel in my body's ability, that the light, shadows, and color I paint are the right ones. This is combined with years of practice in watercolor and making many thousands of mistakes. Learning about what watercolors are transparent and which ones blend nicely together comes with time. This past year, we moved to the high deserts of Colorado Rocky Mountains, and since returning to my home state, I've been blown away by its year-round beauty. The skies are almost always blue, and during the winter when the storms blow through, we get lots of fluffy, dry snow. It can get really cold here. Last week we had sub-zero temperatures, but for the most part, Colorado experiences lots of varied weather with over 300 days of sunshine a year. We live in the mountains and we get a lot more snow here, and although it can be a hindrance on our busy lives as humans, there's so much beauty to take in. The snow stag was inspired by the colors of the snow and sky at sunrise. We see a lot of deer, and he seemed to be the perfect animal to carry the energy of the flurry of winter and the patience and wisdom that's required to make it through.
But I want to touch the mushroom inside there.
It lives in there, it can't come out.
Why?
Because it's a sculpture glued together.
Mushrooms are a constant topic of discussion around our house because we love to color and paint pictures of them and collect mushroom decor, but we find them all over the woods out here too. Amanita muscaria seems quite at home at the top of the mountain trails, and whenever I see them, I get so excited to sit for a moment and be with the fairies. The golden mushroom emerges from the breath of the snow stag and glows like a warm fire at his hooves. He creates his own medicine from within himself so that he can survive the long, dark days of midwinter. The sun rises and paints the sky pink each morning. So if you happen to wake up that time every morning to start work, remember to try to revel in the unique beauty of this time of year. This time of year is also very juicy for creative projects. A lot of the time people are hibernating and there's not much socializing going on, so it's the perfect time to cultivate your favorite creative practices. At several points throughout the painting, I'll take a photo of the watercolor on my iPad and open it in Procreate to play around with the painting. I can edit it to see how adding or removing certain elements might affect the piece. Watercolor is touchy, and if you try to repair areas too much, it ends up looking pretty bad, so you've got to try to plan as much of the image as possible. I use Holbein acrylic gouache and currently have the designer palette with white and CMYK, but I can mix any color I want with just those 4 colors. I really want to get a big set of pre-mixed gouache so that I will have all of them ready to go, and it's just to be added to my never-ending list of art supplies. At some point, I realized I just didn't like the eye on the stag. He looked pretty frightened and maybe a little sad, and it did not fit my original vision. So I have to start the entire painting over because it's a watercolor and you can only get one shot, right? Wrong! Watercolor is often reversible, and there might be a stain on the paper after you lift the color using a clean, wet brush, but chances are you can paint over that with more color and even get some gouache to correct the mistakes. Now, it's true I was super nervous to mess with the eye, and honestly doing this kind of thing is a last resort, but it had to happen. I just went really slowly and was as careful as possible. A real detail moment, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. It's just so much better. Making this video revealed that it took me 14 days and roughly 16 hours to create the snow stag painting.
In case you're wondering what all the scratching noise is going on above my head, that's my family shoveling snow off of the deck. Some of these watercolors do take quite a bit of time, and almost as much as an oil painting would. So I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave me a comment or send me an email. Thanks.